Good day, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Listen Up. I'm your host, Al Neely. And like always, on the other side, we have my man, Tom Cook, the co host. And today we have a special guest. She's an attorney, an activist, a global influencer, and an entrepreneur, a social impact advocate, and an author. Today we welcome Seanne N. Esquire. Thank you for spending time with us, Seanne.
Thank you. I love the way you said my full name like that.
Okay. Well, that's good.
I love that. Yes, thank you.
So, I had no idea who you were until Thomas introduced me to your personality, your person. And since then, I've done my homework, I've done some research, and I have to tell you, I see you as an achiever, someone who is not going to allow anyone to put them in a box. Each step that you take is to reach a goal, and those steps are calculated, and that you're just drawn to success. How would you categorize yourself?
That's interesting. I would say everything that you said is true. The only thing I might change is, and maybe it's just because I kind of don't like the word calculated, but because you know why I think of people who are calculating as being deceitful in some way,
right?
Gotcha. Or not necessarily having a purpose that will result in a positive impact for all. And so, you know, that is my purpose in everything I do. And often I find that I'm led through that purpose as opposed to calculating how I got there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It does. It does.
Can you explain to me the goal and the purpose of Seanne N. Enterprises?
Well, you know what? I don't do much with Seanne N. Enterprises anymore. So everything that I do is reflected really in Attain 9. That's where I have kind of taken everything that I do and kind of put it there. And the goal in everything that I do is to firstly is to make an impact, a positive impact, you know, on people, on the world, on how people feel about themselves, on people's ability to achieve through good. And you know, even my my Esquire, as you probably, because I could tell you did your research, you know, I recently got my ESQ back, and I had let it lapse many years ago. And you know, when you come out of law school and pass the bar and then get confirmed by the Bar Association, it's an easy thing to do. You know, you're 20 something years old. You're nothing. You have nothing to look at. There's no substance there. But to do it now, 20 something years later, and I didn't have to retake the bar, but I had to go through the most intense assessment of self that, I mean, I'll just say it was so intense. There were times that I thought, oh God, do I really want to do this? You know, is it really worth it? But, you know, I stayed the course, and that required every aspect of my life to be dissected over a 20 something year period. They found some things where I was like, I don't even know what that is. Let me go see what you're talking about, you know?
Wow.
But the point is that after all of that dissection, you know, to be accepted back into the bar was, I can't tell you how proud I am of that. And how proud I am to have that Esquire on my name, because what it means is that I'm part of a community that is required to do the right thing. that is required to have integrity. And of course, you always have there are, some nuts in every industry, but like those jokes that people make about attorneys, I take those very seriously now, and they're, to me, completely unacceptable, because to get to that rank, it takes a lot. And then, to be, a Black person and a Black woman, then the percentage of Black people that take and pass the bar, it's some ridiculously low amount. And I wasn't even aware of that. And, I'm the kind of person in general who I never really look at things like that, because I don't think of anything as an impediment or anything that can't be achieved.
Right.
So I was actually kind of surprised by those numbers by myself, though I probably shouldn't be.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about going to law school, so you just changed that from me. So now I'm scared. Yeah. Well, okay. So one of the things that I enjoyed immensely was reading your book, The Art of Submission.
You went all the way in, Al, all the way.
But
wow.
You know what? That
was shocking.
It touched me. I know it was written for women, but there are so many things that I think you can relate to in that book as a man.
Yeah.
And you can learn from. So what led up to you? What was your inspiration for writing that? Can you discuss that with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll pull out some of my favorite quotes in there.
Okay. So, it's, as you said, the art of submission, which is, titillating. And it also, it takes people in their own mind to a place, wherever it is that they're going with that word submission. And of course, since you've read the book, that my twist on that is that it's about submitting to self. And, it's a book that I kind of wrote in a way to my 7-year-old self, because when I was 7 years old, I knew who I was. I knew who I was at 7, and I don't have children. So, but I expect that if you're raising children, you can see that there's those kids, they're born with something. They know who they are. And I believe the job of a parent is to just let that progress, whatever that thing is. And I didn't have the opportunity or the space in my growing up to do that.
Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in primarily in Westport, Connecticut. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, but we moved around a little bit. So I was born in Detroit. We went to Ohio. We went to Massachusetts. Then we went to Stamford, Connecticut, and then Westport, Connecticut. So I kind of moved around, a lot when I was a kid. But it was, I was told when I was growing up things like, oh, you're shy. And I mean, I'm not shy. But I have to tell you, I didn't know that I wasn't shy until I was like in my 30s.
Yeah.
I was like, this thing I had been told, and I accepted it, even though it wasn't me. So, I wrote that book, and as you said, primarily for both young women and older women, because we all are, continue to evolve. And I did get a lot of feedback from men who read it, who said it did touch them as well. But I did it so that people would have the opportunity to self-actualize more sooner than I did.
Gotcha. Okay.
Were you going to read a quote?
he's turning this into.
I'm turned. Yeah, I'm leaving Thomas out. I'm sorry, Thomas.
A bioptic. No, no. It's fine. But now you see why I thought Seanne would be an excellent guest. Now, Seanne.
Yes.
Al has started with the very softball.
That was the softball. I'm afraid now.
Affirmation. Yeah, and I guess I'm going to have to be, Barbara Walters' version. the
But wait,
topic.
before you do that, I want to
Okay,
know,
please go ahead.
Al, are you? I do want to hear your quote from the artist submission. Can you pick one out? Because I'm really curious.
Okay, hold on. I got to take my glasses off. That's
Okay.
when you get past 40, that's what happens. Okay. The loss of the mask will be exciting and arousing as if seeing it for the first time, unobstructed. And in quotes, like a virgin touched for the very first time, you're still hot, Madonna. Okay. You will see and be seen, live freely, unabashedly in your nakedness. Okay. Then it goes on. Audit your inner voice. Notice when thoughts or words make your body tighten or cause you to feel a sinking in your abdomen or pelvis. Those feelings of discomfort are your map, your pathway from fraud, misrepresentation, deceit, and disservice to yourself.
That was good. That gave me the chill. I
Yeah,
that's the truth.
I can keep going, but I don't want to like dominate this. Thomas, you go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to hear what that's true. Whoever, if that remains in the show, that is important. That is true.
Yes,
that's good.
Yes. All right, Tom.
Hello, guys. This is going to be like a part 1 and part 2. I can hear the producers saying, "Al, what are you doing?" I mean, I gave Sean the topic, and the topic was a strong Black woman, myth and message. Now, the reason I'm segueing in this regard is this: a byproduct of you, Sean, and I don't want to use quotations of strong Black woman in describing you, but I would acknowledge that some would say that relative to your success, relative to you being a woman and being a woman of color, that you may have at worst some context or could put some context to why anyone would feel an affirmation of someone saying, "Hey, I'm a strong Black woman." Can you give your position on this terminology that's been in the vernacular of our community, at least over the past 10 to 15 years, as something to champion, hey, I'm a strong Black woman. Tell us what your version of that is, if you don't mind.
Sure. I don't think, and I do a lot of writing, so I have to go through my own stuff, but I don't think I've ever referred to myself as a strong Black woman. And I think, for me, more now than ever, I think it's extraordinarily passe.
Okay.
One thing about me is I did my 23andMe very recently and discovered that I'm like, put it this way, they on 23andMe, they divide you into I forget the category, something European and then something sub-Saharan African.
Okay.
And I'm more European than I am sub-Saharan African, by a tad. But the bottom line is I am everything. Okay. So, and then I discovered through the 23andMe that my mother is 60% European. And by the way, that was a lot for her to stomach, even though you might look at her and say, how could you be that way? But she was raised as a Black person, as I was. And in being raised that way, there are pros and cons to that, because I was raised in such a way where, for instance, people would say, well, I grew up in Connecticut. Are you mixed? I would say, no, mixed. I was like, what are you talking about? And now I realize just how dumb that was. Yes, I am mixed, and that's a good thing. And I also recognize the foundation of all humanity is African. And that's a great thing. And my DNA is within a couple 100,000 years, L2C is my haplogroup of mitochondrial Eve, who's L0. So, I mean, it's not even about strong. It's just about what it means to be human. And there's to put a moniker on it, or a description on it, if you're a strong this or you're not. You're a plethora of emotions. And Black women deserve to be recognized as human beings who have a plethora of emotions. I think to say strong Black woman, it's limiting. What about compassionate Black woman? What about passionate Black woman? What about, there's so many, emotions that we all have. And then to say that you're strong, it kind of, as I'm just thinking about it for the first time, it's like a slave thing, like you're strong, like an ox or something, like you can take it, and we can't. Not only we don't
has a masculine. I believe, if I could interject, I believe that it literally takes away from your femininity to use at worst that adjective of strong, wise, possibly.
But not every Black person is wise. Some Black people are dumb.
That's true. That's true. Oh my.
I mean, right?
This is what I'm
like. There's everyone. You don't know why does someone have to be defined? Every single person is different.
Sure. Yes. So this is what I learned from just doing research. She's not going to let you put her in a box, boss. So
we're not trying to. We're not trying to.
I know.
But the relativity.
The title.
Let me say this.
Okay.
The relativity is as such. We're not personalizing it. What I'm saying is I'm putting it out in a capacity of reasons why. There's always, the old adage, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's got to be a galvanizing reason.
Yeah, but Tom, I would argue that galvanizing reason is negative. Okay. So, the first thing that comes to my mind is, and I can't think of the name, but there's a physician who's known as the father of gynecology. Mm-hmm. And he literally used Black women without any kind of anesthesia, no painkiller, no nothing, naked on a slab, and tested gynecological stuff on their bodies. I mean, and there's actually a painting of this guy, and you see this Black woman on her knees, getting, and because she wasn't being examined, she was being tortured.
Is it James Sims?
That's it. And I'm pretty sure that they took his statue down recently. He had a statue somewhere, the father of gynecology.
But they should have.
And they should have. And it's because people think that Black women are so strong that they don't feel. And it's the same reason now that when Black women go to the hospital and say, I think I'm having a heart attack, I'm thinking I'm with this, they're like, oh, you're fine. You're a strong Black woman. So, I would say I'm now, this is such an important conversation. Like, we need to get rid of that altogether. Just stop. We're not strong Black women. We are human. And because of the history of slavery in this, and by the way, I would wonder, in Africa, the continent, do they refer to people as strong Black women? I kind of think they don't. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would even go as far as to say that title is frightening right now in our society. I feel like when you get people like Stacey Abrams and Kamala Harris, people fear them, and they don't listen to them. When you fear something, you can't hear what they're saying. It doesn't matter how much sense it makes. It's that fear. So
I think that
I think I will stop saying that now.
Sure.
Yeah. And Black women have the right to be soft.
Yes.
As all women do.
What's interesting is, and I'm not being devil's advocate, I'm acknowledging that there is a segment of our community that actually feels like it is affirmative. And what I was doing by interjecting is to actually allow an opportunity to look at how it can be counterproductive. So what you're saying is exactly what I'm feeling and what I feel when I hear that. I'm going to use, matter of fact, I mentioned to Al, we were considering doing a tribute to Tina Turner. I'm just going to use this for context, not necessarily even musically, but I'm going to use it relative to the metaphorical and visual. When people think of what's love got to do with it? Someone who has been at worst verbally abused, at best possibly physically abused.
No, not possibly. She was actually.
Was actually.
So
forget it.
You kind of said that backwards. Right. So she was actually.
And I thank you.
Physically abused, and she was emotionally abused.
And emotionally abused.
And
I wanted to say emotionally, even more so. The reason I say that is this. When any woman, not just Black woman, looks at her rising through the ashes to become this phoenix and icon of a genre independent of Ike Turner, I could say that I could point to her metaphorically and say, hey, that was the strong Black woman. And me saying it doesn't have the same effect necessarily as a woman beating her own chest saying it. Do you understand what I mean? I'm saying it in a capacity of saying, hey, she came through a lot of stuff to keep herself grounded enough to start again, with another persona.
I know, so, but what does her being Black have to do with it? It kind of like not what love has to do with it. What is being, let me just say why I say this, because you look at someone like Cher, and apparently they had a pretty close relationship. Cher went through very similar stuff with Sonny Bono. I don't recall if he beat her, but he abused her in other ways.
I think he did.
And he also, tried to take her name, tried to take her music. And that's exactly what Ike did to Tina. He gave her that name and then tried to take the name away. And that's the only thing that she walked away with. And that kind of abuse that women have gone through around the world has nothing to do with being Black. And I think that by us ourselves as Black people limiting it to Black, that's where it's a disservice to us. Because everyone is going through those things. You know what I mean?
Sure. Again, I think that this conversation in general was going into a more of a why would someone attach themselves to strong? And I'm going to use one other, and I'll be linear with this one. Single parenthood, just to give you an idea. That now is like the new badge. And you even hear other either athletes, entertainers, or those that may have been successful. The second thing they say is, well, I came from a single Black woman's home. And that becomes, that's your badge. And I spoke to my wife about this, and I believe she understood what I was saying. I said, I know that some tend to lead with empathy in order to, add crescendo to their story. It's almost like Tyler Perry saying, hey, I lived in my car. Everybody now, I lived in my car before I became a billionaire. So in some form of almost empathy leading to a better life, I hear a lot of women saying that, or even their children saying, yeah, I came from a single parent home, but now look at me now. And I said that I think that when we put things out there like that and then start getting applause for it, that can also hold us back as a community. And I'm talking about meaning I told my wife in this capacity, I said, the goal is not to be a single parent. The goal is to be a very loving parent just in general. The goal is to try and have a cohesive and very fruitful relationship, if possible, if not marriage. So I think badge assessment and handing out, I'm a strong this and I'm a, becomes even more divisive. And I truly see this relationally, where women who now, like yourself, if someone decides to put a badge on you because you've been successful and you happen to be single, that doesn't mean that you're not open to having being feminine as well as intelligent. Do you understand what I'm trying to say in that regard?
No.
So, here,
Al, help me out here
yes.
in
Okay.
this, what I'm trying to say.
I think Thomas, what winds up happening is we're putting people in, we're categorizing them, and when you do that, you limit their thoughts. You limit their ability to accomplish anything. So by saying that, it does limit people from accomplishing things. So if I have to take a look at Seanne's life, I'm talking for you, Seanne. I'm sorry. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So if you take a look at her life, each step that she takes is pulling her in a different direction. And she's doing that without the limitations of what anyone or the world is placing on her. So if we're all doing that, and I'm going to tell you, we should all do that. That's how we should all live. But we don't, because we allow people to put those labels on us, like you're Black, you're poor, you're marginalized. If you stop thinking like that and you just start taking steps and moving forward, you'll see that those are just chains that you can break off. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think that that's a very American thing.
Yes.
When it comes to being Black, you know, that putting limitations that are, I mean, they're just not even relevant. And I think that as we, you know, one of the positive things about, you know, social media and all this stuff is exposure, you know, to the fuller world, you know, outside of America. And you know, it is unfortunate, and Tom, this kind of relates to what you were saying, that the unfortunate thing is you have all these, you know, housewives of this and that are, and those women, they're acting those roles, you know what I mean, and they're doing that to get paid, and it's not good for the Black community, because then it's supporting a vision of Black women that just isn't true, because there's some of everything in Black women, just like there is around you know, any other women around the world.
Right. So my thought is, you know, you have to be diverse in your thinking, you have to be diverse in your experiences, and then if you'll be diverse, period. So hey, so Seanne, let me ask you this. Who are your influences in life?
Yeah, so most of my influencers are not living.
Gotcha.
Okay. Gotcha. So normally I have on this necklace, I have it on today. I have a vintage Chanel necklace that I wear, and I wear it because, not because it's Chanel, but because of Chanel the person, and I respect what she did. You know, she is someone who, you know, she lived during a time when they wore, you know, bustles and those big giant hats and everything. And she was like, this stuff just isn't comfortable. Let me see if I can kind of pull this back and create comfort for women. And she did it at a time when that was not seen as acceptable. You know, she's the first person who used the material jersey for women, because she saw men wearing jerseys. She's like, oh, this actually feels really good, you know, and she changed that whole hat, and she made different hats. So I love her and her story, because she was in a time period where women, and this is good, like kind of what we were just talking about, women were supposed to be a certain way. They were supposed to dress a certain way, and they had on those tight, not even girdles, I don't even know what you call those things that they tied around.
Bustle.
What are they called?
Like bustle.
Something like, bustle was one
corset,
thing. Corset, yeah. Corset. So, and they were just, I mean, they were like screaming inside. And she's like, this is crazy. And people told her, oh, no one's going to wear that stuff you're making. Yeah. And then, my God, she became Chanel, you know what I'm saying? You know,
women were taking their ribs out so that they could fit into, that's just madness.
Yes.
That's just madness. So how much of an influence would you say your parents have had on you? And
I mean, obviously a very important influence. I would say, and my parents are you know, by whatever standards, you know, very, very successful. And they came from, you know, not much, and have, you know, worked very hard to achieve what they've achieved. I would say that because of their life experience, and again, I'm not a parent, so
right.
I'm sure many parents do this, they put certain fears on their kids based on what they've experienced. And then that can be difficult for the child, you know. So even going back to what we were saying about being Black, when I was growing up in Westport, Connecticut, I assumed that no one liked me because I was Black. I assumed that I was not likable because I was Black. I was assumed that, because, you know, I was told not to trust white people. I assumed that white people were out to get me, and that I couldn't like them. I mean, that they couldn't like me. That's what it was, that they couldn't like me. And literally, I mean, I found out years later that the people that I was in high school with, they really liked me. They respected me. They thought I was smart. They thought I was pretty. I remember, like, you know, little, you know, boys liking me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, how could they like me? Because I did not think I was likable. And I didn't know I was likable really from a female perspective until I went to Howard. And I was like, whoa, what is this? You know? And so, and that kind of all ties into what we're talking about right now, those false restrictions. And then look at me, and they're like, oh, are you mixed? I'm like, no, you know, it's like, it's so crazy.
Right.
The things that I believed that were not true. And I really do hope, and it's part of, you know, all the efforts that I make, that we can break down those boundaries, remove those boundaries, because when you remove them, what it does, it is allows people to be who they really are and fulfill the purpose that they're here to fulfill.
Absolutely. Thomas, how would you categorize your mother?
She was a strong Black woman.
Yeah, but I know how he means. But
good answer.
Describe her.
No,
I love talking about my mom. She's one of my favorite people.
No, my mother was actually a factory worker, and a housewife, of course, as well as the matriarch for the Cook family. She took pride in the lineage of her family and my father's family, to a point where literally she knew more about my dad's family history than he did. Yeah. Okay. And she was, what do you have, that ancestry type of thing that you can go into these days? Well, she had a book that had the photos and the facts long before. And I'll keep it brief in that regard. But I think that there was something very sentimental about a woman whom allowed her family to understand that agape was the glue. You know, it wasn't going to be about anything brighter than the unity of that lineage. So we were rich in that capacity. Okay, I think I'll put a point in that one.
Can I say about my mother? She, even though she's, like I said, now we know she's 60% European, she is a strong Black woman too.
Watch it.
So it's like and some of the things that happened to her, you know, also happened to me. My mother was a teacher with a master's in what do you call it? You know, counseling and what have you. And she taught Spanish and French. So 2 times. So once in 1974, she was hired as a Spanish teacher. She's hired, things are, you know, going on. And then she fills out her paperwork and marks Black on the paperwork. And they're like, what the heck? We're not trying to hire no Black woman to teach Spanish. So they literally fired her. Wow. And she had a lawsuit, and there was this whole thing, and she won, and there was that. Then 7 years later, same thing happened in Westport, Connecticut. She's hired as a Spanish teacher. All the people are walking around trying to like having all these conversations, trying to figure out what her race is. And again, she claimed Black. And same thing. She's some other things happened, but they let her go because she was Black. Now, shoot to me practicing law in 1992, my first job in Philadelphia. I got a job at a big firm called Meserov Gelman, Jaffe Kramer and Jameson. And
that's
my very
definitely a name there. That's it.
Yes, yeah, definitely the name. I was there my first day, for all the associates. I was the only, Black associate. The firm had one Black partner, and they still have that same one Black partner today, even having merged with another firm. There's still that one Black partner.
Progress.
Yeah, his name is Al Dandridge. Really great attorney, worked at the SEC. He signed me into the bar back then. But so first day, we're having our orientation. I then go to my office. I'm old enough where we actually had, our own office. It wasn't a cubicle. And the managing partner comes into my office and says, well, as you know, you're sharing a secretary with a senior partner. He's our most senior litigator. This guy was very well known. His secretary has been and that's what we called it, secretary. His secretary has been, with him for 20 something years. And I said, yes, I'm aware of that. And he says, and she has told us that she does not want to work for a Black female attorney.
Oh, wow.
But we've decided that she's going to do it anyway. So my head is spinning. I'm like, so you're talking about strong Black woman. So here I am, day one, the only Black associate, the third Black person to ever work at this firm. And they're telling me that I have to work with a secretary who doesn't want to work for a whatever. And this is what is interesting to me about this today, because I think about it differently than I did, is that now that I think about her not wanting to work for a Black attorney, like I would have loved to have asked her, and she said Black female attorney. That was specific. I would love to have asked
that was
her,
double.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
And that goes to this conversation. What do you mean why? What is it about a Black female attorney? That's three things, right? Black female attorney that makes you not want to do that. What are you thinking?
Right.
And so what I ended up having to do was, monitor my work, because this is a time we're doing dictaphone. Back then, I really depended on her. And bottom line, I say, long story short, I got her ass fired because she wasn't doing what she was supposed to do. And I took records of I'm an attorney. I was trained to do that, right? I'm keeping records of, what she was and wasn't doing. And she kind of, rolled up into my office one day and says, oh, I hear you've been complaining about me, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have. and mind you, I'm doing this and I'm 22 or something. So, kind of what you're saying about parents, my parents instilled in me, the capability, the ability, and the right to protect my place and my space in the world without fear. I did that without hesitation, and I think about it now. I almost wonder, well, I don't have to wonder where I got that from. I got that from my parents, and so, I said to her, I said, well, good, let's call the managing partner and reiterate the fact that you don't want it. She said, fine. I said, good. I called him. Here I am, first year associate, calling up the managing partner. And I'm like, Steve, so-and-so is here, and she would like to reiterate to you that she does not want to work for a Black female attorney. I think you need to come to my office. He got down there so quick, and her ass was fired, and no secretary messed with me ever again. And by the way, that happened to me when I worked on Wall Street. I worked at CIBC. I was the only Black person and the only woman on the convertible bond desk. My boss was absolutely fantastic. Scott Finley, a West Point guy. He had told these guys before I came in, he's like, she's Black, she's a woman, she's a lawyer, all this. Don't mess this up, Right. So literally day one, and on Wall Street, you're sitting, you're shoulder to shoulder. And it was a very prestigious group, institutional sales of convertible bonds. And this guy I'm sitting next to, he just starts talking about, he's told some joke about something. It was like black men ain't shit and lesbians, something. And I was just like, did this guy seriously just say this? And so now I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, okay. So now you have to think, what do you do? do I say something? Do I not say something? This is my first day on the job. You know,
Sure.
if I say something,
That was a test. That was a
yeah,
test.
is it going to impact me? That, you
Yeah.
know, so I go into my boss's office later that day and he's like, "Oh, how was your day?" I was like, "Oh, it was great." That's great. And I said, "But you know, I just want to tell you this joke this someone told me today." So I told him the joke and he said, "Oh, whoever said that is fired."
Wow.
And that guy was fired the next day.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
So the moral of this story is
What is it, Tom?
the moral of this story is it is okay to self-identify of strength in certain scenarios, but just not necessarily has to be your ID badge. We're not and I think that you've done an excellent job in advocating against allowing anyone to box anyone in that particular realm, thinking that it's a compliment. That's the part that I was trying to say. That, and to you as well, Al, that even though we may share a cipher of understanding because we are possibly more worldly and global in our thinking, thought pattern, and our exposure, there is a segment of folk that continue to allow the media to project this as something that's like you're supposed to be applauded for. And that's why I kind of put it out there. I had to kind of represent that group so that you could change the narrative. And that's why I wanted to have
and I wish we had a younger person on here because I would love to hear, you know, say like a millennial or something to, you know.
Sure.
We can do it again. I have
sure.
tons of questions I haven't even gotten to. So
oh, really?
you're gonna have to let
I
me get one.
They would identify. Go ahead.
We could do a part two. We could do a part two.
Well, it's up to Seanne. It's up to Seanne. Mm-hmm. So
sure.
I hate to go off script. Excuse me. I hate to go off.
You don't. No, you don't, Al.
He doesn't.
You don't hate to go off script. Stop.
He does it. And he does it all the time. Go ahead.
Okay. Are you still the president and CEO of iCar Sports and Entertainment?
Oh, that's going way off script. No, I am not. And there is a lawsuit surrounding that. So actually, I would like for you to edit that out of this if you could.
Sure.
Okay, that's something I would like to edit out. But I was sexually harassed there and terminated after I reported the sexual harassment and have a lawsuit that's moving actually quickly in the right direction.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That'll teach you how to stay on script, okay?
and so, Al, if you probably saw headlines of press releases, and they removed all those press releases, and so that's why it's so it's something I don't. Yeah, it's something I try not to talk about because it looks weird, you know, and and it doesn't help me to talk about it. I mean, I might talk about it when that shit is over. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Right. But I don't mind you having asked the question.
Okay, good. So
do you have time to give Al and our audience just a little background with respect to your parents and what they do?
Oh, sure. So my parents right now they own 2 Harley Davidson dealerships in New Jersey. And they just prior to that, they also owned either 4 or 5 Wendy's franchises that were in the Philadelphia area. And so they've been entrepreneurs for a little while. Prior to that, my father was a senior executive at Coca-Cola that was owned by Bruce Llewellyn and Julius Erving. My mother, as I mentioned, was a teacher, a professor, and a guidance counselor. And so they spent the last 30 years which is not what I grew up in, you know, them having these businesses and everything. That was well after I was, you know, out of law school. So I didn't grow up in that life of saying living in their entrepreneurship. However, I did grow up in the life of them constantly moving forward. And as it relates to just to go back to this conversation around women, it was my mother's idea for them to start do the Wendy's. It was my mother's idea for them to do the Harley. And my father would say that in any public forum. And so he gives her credit for not only coming up with those ideas, but pushing them forward and thereby pushing the family forward.
That's fantastic. I defer. Al, go ahead.
I defer.
Yeah.
Did you have your law degree too?
It's pending.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to bring this to an end, but
we done already.
we can do it again.
Okay.
What's next for you? What do you
Sure. So my biggest thing that I'm working on is a unscripted show that's called The Elevator. Shark Tank meets The Apprentice for social enterprise.
Gotcha.
I have some really great people involved with it, including a 5-time Emmy Award-winning show producer, Bill Pruitt, who did The Apprentice, Amazing Race, Emeril Lagasse, et cetera, et cetera. And the show is, if you can imagine, I see it as, I call it elevated prosperity, a celebration of elevated prosperity. And so when we're doing our casting call, we're doing a casting call for people who are active in business to make the world a better place. So it could be a casting call for people who are involved in alleviating poverty or alleviating hunger or alleviating homelessness. We bring them in, we put them in an incubator. I have a very high level executive team, very experienced on Wall Street and business and what have you, to kind of shore them up. And then 3 of them will go onto this show. They'll be tested in a lot of ways. A lot of those ways are psychological, to make sure that they are the kind of people who are really committed to this work. And then one of the overarching messages of this show is that if you're doing work to make the world a better place, make people's lives better, you should be rich. So this is not about creating nonprofits. And I understand how nonprofits work. I'm not saying nonprofits don't make money, but I'm saying that, to me, doing good work in the world, that's entrepreneurial. And if you're doing it and you're doing it successfully, and children in the United States have clean drinking water, which they don't right now, you should be a billionaire.
Right.
And for me, that's what elevated prosperity is. Do good work, make a lot of money, make a difference, and let's take that stigma away from you shouldn't be making a lot of money while doing good things. Gotcha. And so I'm getting closer day by day to bringing that show to fruition, and it'll be like nothing that anyone has ever seen.
That's fantastic.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that concludes today's episode of Listen Up. I'm Al Neely, and that's Tom Cook. We want to say thank you, Seanne, for coming on with us, and we'll see you next time on Listen Up.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.